I am just so, so, so passionate about helping women, especially women who are overachieving, high achieving, those go getters, those who do so much for everyone else and everything else, but they neglect to pour back into themselves. So I'm so passionate about taking my like expertise and like my life journey around like wellness and self-care and movement and nourishment to really help these women to just transform their lives, transform their bodies, transform their habits. And it's been a journey, and it's been this like really beautiful journey because I've been learning a lot along the way and meeting so many amazing women and hearing their stories. And it's like, okay, Allison, you just have to like dive in there and really hold space. So I've been coaching and personal training and doing all that for about 12 years. And I would say since the pandemic, that's when I noticed a real shift of what people were saying, how they were feeling, what they were wanting, what their frustrations were. And so it was really this like this pivotal moment for me to say, okay, let's start having these conversations and get real. And it's just been awesome. It's been awesome to coach these women and to speak and to talk about it and to like bust some myths and get to the heart and get to the core of what the blocks are and why it's so difficult to make time for yourself. So that's pretty much how I spend most of my days, just on that mission. But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. And it's funny because overachievers, that's what the Go Hard Chick podcast is all about. I mean, the name Go Hard Chick. But it's it doesn't mean we're supposed to go hard all the time. It means that we have to balance that and take care of ourselves. And one thing I realized when I developed this podcast was like the overachieving crowd, if you will, we forget about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We are taking care of everybody else and trying to be something or someone for other people a lot of times. And we're not on top of our health. We're not informed about our health. So that's what this whole podcast and Go Hard Chick is about. So I love it. I love it. So
Yeah.
today, one thing I think you mentioned that you have noticed since the pandemic is that these high achieving women, or women in general, we are struggling with worthiness.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
jump into that.
Yeah. It's so interesting because when I started to realize that a lot of the blocks were tied to worthiness or the lack of feeling worthy, that was a hard pill to swallow for myself. So I first noticed it in myself and realizing that, I was, for lack of better words, I was lighting myself on fire to keep other people warm. And really losing myself in relationships. I was losing myself in the work that I was doing, and some of the projects that I was involved in. And I was, the mentality was, in my 20s, it was you work hard, you hustle, you grind, you get these great results. In my early 30s, that still worked. Something happened around my mid to late 30s where it's like I'm still pushing and doing all these things, but the result, the accolades, the achievements, it's not feeling the way that it used to feel. It's not giving me the life that it used to give. And when you start to get to that point where you're like, I'm not feeling these things anymore, and I'm sacrificing time with myself, time with my friends, with my loved ones, with my partner, with my spouse, with, you know, my hobbies. I'm ignoring my check engine light. I'm, pushing through pain. I'm pushing through exhaustion. I'm doing all these things. It no longer is serving me the way that it used to. And I think every single woman, I'm going to say woman, because I think there comes a point where it's just like, is this it? Is this what I've been pushing for? Is this what I've been striving for? And you get to the top, you get to the pinnacle, and you're like, what what was it all for?
Yeah.
And that was for me a big eye opener, because that moment for me landed me in the hospital.
Mm.
I was at the top of my career. I was at the top of, literally, I felt invincible. I literally felt like I had made it. I had arrived. I had achieved. I didn't even think there was more I could achieve. And then 24 hours later, of all of these amazing things happening in my professional life, my public facing life, I end up in the hospital for 4 days, basically with, numbers that are off the charts with my liver. Basically, my liver is like, you have hepatitis, you have all these, these really high numbers, like in the thousands. And it should be like at 14 or 40. And it was like 1200, 1400. And I laid in a hospital bed for 4 days, and I just replayed everything. You start thinking, how did I get here? And I started to see all the moments, all where I neglected myself, where I said yes when I should have said no, when I should have been more authentic, where all these things, and it just hit me. And at that moment, I knew I had to shift everything in my life, and shift it pretty quickly, because when you're a coach and that's your life's purpose and path, and I always say my life is a curriculum. um, I was like, I have to make some adjustments quickly, so that way I can help and serve other women who are either on track to this moment, who are currently in this moment, or who have had that moment and were too afraid to make a change. And so that's really where a big pivotal change happened for me. And the more I talk with women, I see it in their eyes when I share my story. I see their body language. I see it, and it's like, you get it. Now, what are we
Yeah.
going to do about it?
Right. It's amazing. The body will keep the score, you know? We
Yes.
don't see it happen. We might not really notice it happening, but then our body is just like one day, like, whoa, stop.
Yep.
And
Yep.
in listening to you speak, you brought up accolades and achievements. Oh my God. Because you spoke from the lens of like, I had achieved all these things. And I remember being a young 20 something, and I was a high achiever, like as a young person and in college. And usually, like you said, you work hard, you get results.
Yep.
But then I found myself early in my career where I'm working hard, but I'm not getting the results that I thought I should get. So I
Yep.
remember really struggling with that
Yep.
in my 20s, in my early 30s, and not feeling worthy because I'm not getting what I thought I should be achieving. I'm not, you know what I
Yeah. No, I it all rolls into it, right? Because as a high achiever, as an overachiever, then what we believe is, then let me just work harder, right? So when you don't feel worthy, you work harder. And I can relate to what you're saying, because that was a period that I had. And then it was like, okay, Allison, work harder, appease more, shrink yourself more. So I may have been at the pinnacle of my career and had all these achievements, but I got there as a sacrifice to myself,
mean?
also tied to worthiness, also tied to that. And so that I feel you on that, because that is, it becomes this kind of running thing, like voice in the back of your mind, that's just like, you're not worthy, so push harder. You're not worthy, so do this. You're not worthy, so, and you start to sacrifice yourself in so many ways, trying to get this thing, trying to get that thing, trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be acknowledged. And that's on both sides, it's a pretty dangerous place to be, because at the end of the day, what's happening is you are losing your authenticity. You're losing your fire. You're losing the spark. And you almost, and maybe, it's like you start to feel this like guilt or shame. Like you start to take on, worthiness is kind of like the bucket. And then you start to take on these other things that kind of make it even heavier. Um, and then our behaviors, our habits, what we do start to reflect that. And we may not even know it, but it's like loud and clear once you're on the other side of it.
Yeah, you said something that really made a light bulb go off in me. You said, it was like sacrificing yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember when I was just reflecting on that time in my life, I was working hard to achieve things that I really didn't want.
Yep.
I was working hard to achieve things that I thought, I don't know, society, other people thought I should have, or things that I thought, well, that's what's just what we do. But I
Right.
really didn't want those things. So here I am sacrificing myself, working really hard, not getting achievements that I thought I should be getting for something I didn't want.
It's maddening, right? It's literally maddening when you think about it, right? You're like, oh my gosh, like what, what am I doing? And I would be interested for you. It's like when you had that realization, what was the impact on you or for you?
It was so freeing, Allison. It was because I was sacrificing things that made me happy.
Right.
I wasn't doing things and activities that I enjoyed because I thought I had to focus on this thing here that I really didn't want.
Yeah.
So when I had that realization, it was like I was free.
Yeah.
And now, like you said, you mentioned that you can see it in women around you. Like it's funny how when we go through something, then you can see it in others. So in just talking to people randomly, I see it. I see
Mhm.
that they're trying to get all of these accolades and achievements, and it may not really be what they really want, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard, I think it's hard for people because when you've been conditioned to believe that this is the path you should have, this is the relationship you should have, the job, the whatever it is, the life choices. When you get to the point where you're like, I don't even, and I mean, I don't know if I want this or I don't want this, but it could be, I don't even know if I want this because I don't really know who I am now, right? Like, because it served us at some point. Like I think for high achieving women, overachieving women, like those go hard chicks, it served us to a point. It got us certain places. It allowed
Yes.
us to, you right. So I'm never going to look back at my path and be like, well, you really, it was important for me. It was necessary, and it mattered to me at one point. I can own that. I think what happens when we get on that trail or that path, we become just like a robot, and we just are doing because we're conditioned to do, and we keep going, and it's kind of your checking off the boxes. And one of the things that I really encourage when I work with my clients is, a couple of things that I do in our sessions. Like I say, I'm a mirror. So I'm always trying to reflect back certain things. I'm reflecting back, when I hear, in our very first session, this is what the conversations were. And now we're on session 8, and I'm hearing different language just to show that in 8 weeks you can evolve. In 8 minutes you can evolve. And I think it's important to have these moments where you're constantly coming back to yourself. You're constantly checking in with yourself to see, like, is this still what I want? And if it's not, then what do I do about it? Versus some people, this isn't what I want, but I'm miserable. This isn't what I want, but I'm afraid to try something different. This isn't what I want, but I feel stuck, right? So I think that there is something that is what I would recommend for every woman frequently, is to constantly check in with yourself. Constantly check in, like, have your values changed? Have your goals changed? What's different about you? What's different about your life now? And I think that's one way for us to just, course correct, because it's like, an airplane, right? When an airplane's flying, a 1 degree shift can have you going from Toronto to Ireland, right? Like over time, you continue to deviate. And then you wake up one day and you're like, why am I in Ireland when I was supposed to be in Toronto? Well, because you never took the time to just check. And so I think that is something that is, for people who can't find the freedom in it, it's like, okay, well then you have to start small and like just check and see where you are. And then it builds from there. But it's a process. Oh man, it's a process.
Yeah. And I think you're right. And just thinking about what you said, a lot of overachieving women, it kind of started in childhood. Like we were the smart ones, we got the good grades. And so then, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but I know when I achieved things as a child, whether I got an award or great grades or whatever,
Yeah.
that made my mom happy.
Yeah.
And so the pleaser in me, I wanted to make her happy. I wanted to make people happy. So then I become this adult. And so I'm doing things that I think makes others happy. Not maybe not really realizing that my worth doesn't necessarily come from that, you know?
100%. Yeah. Because it doesn't. Like, and that's the thing that another thing that's maddening, right? It's like it's easy to say like your self-worth isn't dictated by your accolades and this and that. That is a very cute thing to say. So cute to say it. But unfortunately, to your point, if you've been conditioned from the age of 4, 5, 6 years old, that that cute little phrase, that like declaration, that feels untrue. That feels false because you have data that proves no, no, no. I get praised when I do all these things, and I've been praised when I've done all these things, and people think I'm so great and this and that. So you're literally going against what the belief system that you've built, right? And a belief, all beliefs are just like a table, right? And if that's where you are, you have so many legs supporting that table now. Hearing, oh, your worthiness isn't dictated by, your bank account or whatever. You're like, that's not real. It 100% is.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that, for like I always say, my life is a curriculum. And we talked about this a little bit last week when we were just, talking. And I've had a lot of things related to my professional and personal life, roles, titles, accolades, literally gone, gone, stripped away. And it's all been things that, like, there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't talk my way into it. I couldn't convince things. And some of it was like, it felt like for no reason. Like it was like, hey, we have you booked to speak at this event. It's just going to be this huge thing. You're going to get a lot of money for it, all the things. And then I get an email that the event's canceled, only to find out the event's not canceled. I was just taken off the speaker list, but and being the only woman and the only one of color on like the main speaker, I was the only one taken off and was told that the event was canceled. And then I find out that it's still happening. That has been the theme of my life for the past, I would say, 2 years.
And that can really screw with your quote unquote worthiness.
Let me tell you, it has been, it's like you're in the ocean and it's like a wave comes and it knocks you down and you're like, oh, okay. And you stand up, you're like, okay, let me trudge back and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so for me, it has been this period of time where it's like, who am I? Who am I without this title, without this role, without this relationship, without this person, without this thing, without this home? Like I'm telling you, it's been just just falling down around me. And through it, what I've learned from this is like, wow, Allison, look at how much you shrunk yourself to fit into these roles and these things and what you allowed because you didn't feel worthy. So you were like so happy that someone would want you to do this or choose you to do that or all these things that I neglected so much. And it's freeing and it's terrifying. It's freeing and it's like, oh, like you get this like self-compassion and self-love, and you have to really love yourself exactly where you are. And that has been, it's been healing, it's been painful, but it's given me this crash course on worthiness, which I would never have ever gotten if my life continued to have the trajectory that it was. Successful on paper, everything looked great. But what's happening now in this new season that I'm in is that I'm leaning into really creating space for the things that I've been neglecting around my health, around my well-being, around all these things. And I've been able to double down with my clients. So now when we're working together, I'm able to like really say, okay, I had a client last week who said, oh, I know I should just be doing more cardio. I need to do more cardio. I need to do, and I'm like, well, you're already doing a significant, you're doing enough. And she couldn't hear it. She couldn't hear me saying like, what you're currently doing is enough. It might mean that you need to change some things within the how you're training, but I don't think it's doing more. And so that is, how we start to realize my worthiness isn't attached to doing more. Sometimes it's about doing less so I can like really figure it out. And it's a hard shell to crack because again of the conditioning. But what I rejoice and I celebrate when my clients are like, I set a boundary today. I'm like, okay, how did that feel? Tell me about it. Okay, great. It's like these little small things that we start to do that start to say, I'm worth taking this time to eat my lunch without checking my emails or being on my phone or eating it during a meeting or having to have my camera off on a Zoom call because I'm eating my lunch. It's like, no, you're busy fueling your body and you deserve that. You deserve that, so it's a really interesting space. And I think the more that, and I don't wish what I've been going through on anyone. And so that's another reason why it's like, stop and check in with yourself and really see like, is this what I want? Is this a true reflection of me acknowledging my worthiness and taking action to support it? Or am I going back to beliefs around what my worthiness is? It's a hard one.
Yeah. And that's funny because I was having a conversation kind of like you with a client slash friend, very high achieving woman.
Yeah.
And she was struggling with like, she's like, I can't get my workouts in. What if they call me? I get all these calls and I'm like, you got to set the boundaries.
Yep.
And like you, when I got started in this space, it was strictly, well, I won't say like you, but for me, when I got started, it was strictly, want a meal plan? You want an exercise plan? Let's go. And
Yep.
then as I went through my own stuff, I was like, it's not just that simplistic. Like,
No.
we got to deal with, like you said, worthiness. We got to deal with setting boundaries. We got to deal with, there may be trauma. There may be a lot of things going on that keep us
Yep.
as women from really focusing on ourselves and making the time for ourselves. So how do you do it? Like, how do you work? Well, you did give one example of how you work with clients, but how has this shifted how you kind of work with your clients?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because yes, a lot of women will come to me and say, "Okay, Allison, I want to lose some weight. I want to, eat healthier." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, cool, cool. We'll do that." What has shifted is the approach in that the first couple of sessions, we're not even talking about fitness or
Hmm.
nutrition or any of that. And it's interesting because, my clients, like, they want to jump in and they want to, like, okay, like, what workout should I be doing? And, I'm going to do this and do that. And I always say, we will get there. But what I have really shifted is the first few sessions is I want to get super, super, super clear on where they are. And I'm going to get super, super clear on the conditions in which they're, like, operating. I want to understand their operating system first, because I've found I've had way more success over the past few years when I took that approach of consistency, when we are working from that, like, deeper place and understanding what's really getting in the way, what are the blocks. I'm like, I want to look at your calendar. I'm looking at all the things that are kind of surrounding them. And from there, start to figure out where's the lowest hanging fruit. Where do we need to start? Versus, let me give you a plan. I can give you, listen, I've been a personal trainer, certified all these things for years. I know I'm a pretty good trainer and all that. So I don't doubt that. But what I had to realize when I was training earlier on was that I can see you 3 times a week. So for 3 hours each week, you're mine. You're in my domain. But outside of those 3 hours, you could be doing whatever it is you want to do and not get the results, not do the things that you need to be doing. And when you don't get results, it's my fault. And so
Yeah.
I learned that, right? Like, because, like, well, I have the trainer and I'm doing all these things. And it's like, yeah, but if you think that 3 hours of dedicated focus on fitness is going to change everything else, then you're going to be stuck. That's why we have these, like, yo-yo diets and $1 billion weight loss industry, because it knows that it's more than that, but it can capitalize on it. So my approach now is going a lot deeper in the first few sessions. We do a lot more of, like, guided visualizations. We're doing breath work. We're getting a bit more embodied, and we're also looking kind of outward to see where are the opportunities. And from there, then we can start to seamlessly put the plans in place. And it's starting small. I think for a lot of high achiever, overachieving women, it's like, I, I'm going to do this thing called turkey. I'm going to, and it's like, I think only 8% of the population can actually do that successfully. I think it's like the other 92% are like, no, we need some structure. We need a little bit to ease into it. But it's also like unconditioning and unlearning these certain behaviors that may have worked in the boardroom, that may have worked on your trajectory. But when we're dealing with ourselves, which we're not machines, we are these, very special, precious beings that need care and love and attention. And so, what I have found that's been really transformative for a lot of my clients is, like, yes, they start to lose weight, they start to do that, but you start to see this softening that happens, and this compassion around themselves, and this, like, liberation that makes them feel super charged up to take better care of themselves. And they don't feel guilty about it. They don't feel bad about it. They feel confident in their ability to uphold boundaries. They are exploring new ways to move their bodies. They are trying new things with food. They are understanding, what self-care can look like for them. They are, we're learning ways to reduce stress. So, we're just creating this holistic way around taking better care of yourself. And then at that point, you now know, because you know you're worthy, you're deserving, you have the structure, you have the guidance. I've been holding you accountable. And now it's like, go live your life, because you now know how to do it from a lens of pour into myself first, and then everything else works out, because it always does.
Yes.
So it's,
Yes. And that's hard for a lot of us to
yeah,
get.
yep,
Um, and I'd love to hear, like, some of the challenges you have with working with these women, because I can imagine that it's going to be that there are some huge challenges, because the way that they have been living
yep,
has supported them in some way,
100%.
you know? Like, I was
Ah,
working with a client, a high achieving, and her job required some nights she had to work very late. And so she's up snacking on, like, candy and stuff. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, you can't really, but that had been serving her because it helped her stay up late,
Right.
so trying to break through that, um, it can be very difficult.
Yeah. Well, and it's difficult because I think that there was a movement that happened where it was this like self care above everything else. I'm going to absolve myself of my responsibilities. Kids, you better learn how to make your own lunch. Like they're three. You should probably make their lunch for them. You know what I mean? Like, but there was this like huge wave that was unsustainable and unrealistic. And so then the guilt and the shame and like you feel kind of foolish. Like, I can't believe I tried to do that. So instead it's like, okay, listen, I had one client, she was an attorney, and she always got strep throat after a trial. Like once
Oh.
she was done, she would always get strep throat. Always. So here's the thing. She has to do her job. Her job is stressful. The type of law that she practiced was t- very intense. I don't think I could personally have done it. Um, and I said, okay, you have to do your job. So there's no work around that. And so it's like, okay, what can we do to better support you during the times when you don't have the time to work out as much, your sleep is going to be compromised. And so it's really about working within the confines of their responsibilities, because here's the thing, high achieving women, they still want to achieve things. Achievement isn't bad, right? And I don't, my clients aren't like, I'm trying to quit my job and move to a farm. No, they actually just want to do their job better. They want to do things from a more resource space. So my job is, how do we make sure that happens? So let's look at it. So that's, I think, the one thing is that, um, you know, allowing them to still feel whole in who they are, but just kind of looking at their habits and behaviors. And a lot of it's just like making a shift. Yes, if you're up late, you are now in a point where you're going to get hungry again, because typically your body would be sleeping and doing its things. But you ate dinner at 8, now it's 12. You're going to be hungry because you're not asleep. So it's okay, what can we do around to help this? Maybe it's a shift in their snacks, maybe it's a shift in their nutrient timing during the day. If you know you're going to be working late, what needs to shift in your day? So it's teaching them to be a bit more flexible, because I think high achievers, overachievers, we are so great at like, here's a plan, stick to the plan, all or nothing. And if I don't have enough time or I can't honor the plan 100%, then I'm either not going to do it, I'm going to feel bad, or I'm going to try to do it knowing I don't have the time or capacity to do it anyway, but I'm still going to do it because that's what I do. So the hard part is giving my clients permission to be flexible, giving them permission to give themselves grace, and giving them permission to do what they can do with what they have. That's hard because that's typically not how they navigate. And it can feel like you're less than. It can feel like, but I'm not giving it 100%. And I have to remind my clients often, it's like, what you've done is more than enough in this moment. Because the alternative is either you burn yourself out or you don't do anything at all. So I'm going to honor whatever deposit you were able to make into your well-being. And that can be just enough in this moment. But once you are done with this kind of period, we go right back to our plan, right back to it when things are a bit more sustainable. But it's not meant to be perfect every time. And so that's one challenge that I find. And I think also just like the do more, like I need to add more to my plate. And so a lot of times they fight me on like taking something off their plate.
Mhm.
Or I'll say, you can only do cardio for 30 minutes. And I had one client recently, she was like, what do you mean only 30 minutes? I said, well, during this period right now, your cortisol levels and adrenaline are probably through the roof. Your stress response is so high. Exercise is stress. So like it does create stress. There's good stress, there's bad stress. But I was like, where you are, your baseline right now, more intense cardio is actually just pumping more in stress into the body for you. And what I need you to do, we need to lower that baseline a little bit, because that's why you're getting sick. That's why you're getting the headaches. That's why you're not able to sleep. And I said, just 2 weeks, no more than 30 minutes. And she was doing her cardio on Peloton. I said, and I don't want you to PR. Do not push for a PR. And she was just like, well, I don't know. I'm like, trust me. It was, and lo and behold, she texted me. She was like, I'm sleeping so much better and I don't wake up with like that anxiety in my stomach. I was like, yeah, I bet. Because you're giving your body a chance to like reset and come back down. So, I think those are two things that I find, you're dealing, and again, it all goes back to worthiness. It's like I'm not good enough if I don't PR. I'm not good enough if I don't make everything work. I'm not, if I sacrifice everything and get everything into this trial, into this case. It doesn't matter if I come out of it with strep throat and lethargic and sick, but I gave it my all. And it's like, but then the rebound. So basically all you're doing is you're living your life in high activation and just like a deep rebound just to be highly activated again. That's not thriving.
Yeah.
That eventually is going to cause you to burn yourself out if you haven't already.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that's a hard thing that many women struggle with. Um, I think it's getting better, but I just remember a time when I don't know, you might be too young for this. There was a commercial when I was a kid. I can't even remember what brand it was for, but it was just a song and this woman dancing like she can bring home the bacon, So it was like this woman who, she worked. She was a go hard chick. Woman
Yeah.
can work, she can bring home the bacon, she can put it in a pan. So it was this belief that we could do it all. We can
Yeah.
have the fabulous career, we could have the children, the relationship, the house, all everything we want. And we are doing it all 100%. And I remember getting into a debate with someone because I began to realize like we really can't. You can have it all, but maybe not all at once. Or you have to come to grips with the fact that, like for me, for example, when I am thriving in my career, I might not be the best mom. And I don't
Yeah.
like that, but I mean, that's the truth. Or when I'm
Yeah.
on it as a mom, I'm not, my career is not,
Right.
or the house may not be where I want it to be. And
Right.
so I'm never 100%. I might be 100% in one area and then, 20% in others. Or I just kind of hover at under 100% in everything. I'm okay. I don't have to be 100% in any one thing.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the thing, right? Because that is in essence having it all. When you are sitting in your worthiness at whatever level you are with all those things, then you have it all. But it's the moment that you start to judge yourself, or you start to step outside of who you are, or shrink yourself, or do all these other things to continue to have it all, then you don't have it all. You don't. And it's impossible. But when you're able to be like, I accept myself for where I am with what I'm doing, and I love myself for it, and there's no judgment, and I'm grateful for what I have, and like that is where the worthiness really begins to take hold. And then you're not worried about what you don't have, because you're so filled with what you know to be true about you. And so it's hard because it's taking the external versus like, I I know I'm a good mom. I know like, and I think that's the thing too, right? It's like, what does having it all really mean? Right?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, is having it all having a clean, pristine home, or is it making sure that you have a home that where memories are made and love is felt and meals are shared and nights are calm, right? Is like, we have to get very clear on like what it is that we truly desire and what will really support who we are, because you can have a beautiful home that feels empty and cold. You can have a relationship that's empty and cold. You can have kids that you don't ever really spend time with, right? You can have money in the bank and can't spend it. So you can have it all and still feel low and not worthy. But if you can flip it and just be worthy where you are, then you start to show up differently and you start to give yourself the grace. And you're no longer, and that's the thing about that commercial, right? She's celebrated for all that she can do. That commercial wasn't celebrating who she was as a person. She wasn't being celebrated for being. She was celebrated for doing.
Yes.
And so worthiness is acknowledging where you are and just simply being that version of yourself in that moment. And you're worthy at 10%, and you're worthy at 100%, and you're worthy if you hover under 100% throughout your entire life. You're worthy of all of it at every single stage. And when you start to feel that, like in some of my lowest moments, I had to remind myself, like, you're still worthy. And in those moments, I would get up and I would go and take a shower because I'm worthy of being clean. And I would go downstairs and, didn't have appetite and, the anxiety, depression, the fear, uncertainty, but I'll make a smoothie because I'm worthy of fueling my body. I'm worthy of giving myself what it needs to get through the day. I'll do my yoga. I may not be able to go for the run or lift heavy weights, but you know what? I'll do a 20-minute yoga practice because I'm worthy of my body to be moved and loved on. And so you start to, when you get rejected from like a work thing or something, it's like, I don't want to go into my emails, or it's like, but I'm worthy of showing up for the people that are showing up for me. Right. So you start to, you build this thing of like, I'm doing it because I'm worthy and I deserve it. And even when you're in your great moments and life feels really great, you're still worthy of taking some time for yourself. You're still worthy of of doing the workout, or like to your client, it's like, I don't have time to work out because everyone will call me. You're worthy to like create a container around it and say, I'm doing this for myself so I can be the best version of myself. But we have to get comfortable with being, and that's
Yeah.
hard when you are so used to doing.
Yeah. And you also mentioned, I just wanted to reiterate that it's important to know what you want your life to look like. What do you
Yeah.
want? And I think
Yeah.
so many I didn't do that until very recently. Like here I am 50 years old. A whole grown I'm grown. And
Yeah.
I never asked myself, what do I want my life to look like until
Yeah.
very recently.
Yeah.
And so now I ask that of others that come to me for advice or clients, what do you want? And
Yeah.
a lot of them don't know. And these are high
Yeah.
achieving women. They could tell you, I want this promotion, I want this, but what do you want your life to look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
And does that promotion fit into that picture? Does that
Yeah.
serve your ultimate goal of how you want your life to look? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's hard when you realize that I'm chasing this over here, but that really doesn't fit into how I want my life to look.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a sobering moment.
Yeah.
It's a real sobering moment. And I think some people are afraid to ask themselves that question and to really go deeper. That's what I'd always tell people. I do this one meditation with clients, and it's like a blank canvas meditation. And it's just like, and I have them listen to it every single day for a week, because the first time they do it, it's superficial. And as they keep doing it, it starts to get clearer in what they really want. And it's hard because when we get down that road and you start to look like, actually this is what I want, and it looks nothing like what I currently have, or
Mhm.
it looks different, right? Maybe not completely, but it's like, oh, wait a minute, there's some discrepancies. And at that moment, a decision has to be made. And it can be hard to walk away from something, to do that. Or you say, you know what, my life is good enough and I'm going to just stay the course. That's you have to make that decision for yourself, right? And we're all on our own journey. That's another thing I always say. But I love that you're like, you start to ask people that and you're noticing that people don't know. And I think that is where another reason where the worthiness comes in is that we don't even believe that we're worthy of having the life that we really want. So we convince ourselves that this is what we want. And we look around and we see other people who have that, or we look around and have people who are praising us for what we've created and the life that we have. And so it's like, well, so that's why I think worthiness is such a powerful theme, but it comes with a lot of responsibility and it comes with a lot of getting out of your own way. It comes with a lot of digging deep. And for high achieving women, that can be scary because you are now faced with a lot of decisions that you've made. You're faced with a lot of regret that you might be carrying, shame and guilt. There's uncertainty, there's confusion. There's a lot going on under the surface when you really go there. And sometimes you don't even have time to even deal with that because you have you have things that you need to do. You have responsibilities, and I'm not saying to blow up your life to dive into it, but it's work. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work. And that's why I think, in our roles that we have as we coach and train women, like I think we have a responsibility of helping these women through that because it is scary and it
Yeah.
can feel really alone when you feel like, because on the outside you have it all together, and so to have to be vulnerable with yourself and be like, I don't have it all together and I'm struggling right now and I'm unsure of who I am, and whether you're 30, 40, 50, like it can be a lot. And so it's like how do you start to implement these small little things into your day to just remind you and to support you as you navigate that journey.
Yeah. And like you said, but that goes back to accolades, the praise that my 5-year-old self had. Praise from others is wonderful, but it can
Yeah,
also remove us from our worthiness.
that's it.
I just remember like when it's no secret. I've always struggled with this career of being an attorney. Um, and I knew my mom, for example, was extremely proud. And I
Yeah.
think that's, she's probably the main reason why I did it. Um, she sends me letters. When she sends me a card in the mail, for example, she always addresses it Attorney Crystal Holmes. And I,
Mhm.
and I, for years, would be like, why are you doing this? You're just my mom,
Yeah.
But she was so proud. So I
Yeah.
knew that and I wanted to achieve and to do. And then when I started to really struggle with the stress from the career, I remember sharing that with her. Like, but I never heard her say, take a break or what, because and I got kind of angry about that because I felt like she was more concerned with the praise. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And I think that's tough, right? Because it's the same thing. Like when I talked to my therapist, we were talking recently, and I was like, the one thing that my parents always said to me is, "I love you and I'm proud of you."
Yes.
And wonderful, right? Like what a gift to hear that, as since that's the one thing I'm sure of, right? And I think it's only been recently that I'm understanding more so that my parents are proud of the woman that I am and not what I do or
Right.
not what I've done. I like, so for me, it was like, I took it as I have to be the student council president, student class president. I have to be the varsity cheerleader. I have to date the star quarterback. I have to do all these things, go to the good school so that they can tell people, they can be proud. And it's tough, right? When it comes from people that you love and it's supported, but that does create this, it amplifies the pleaser. You want to continue to make your parents proud, your children proud, all these, but I think the important part is, are you making you proud?
Right.
Right? Like, can you look in the mirror and be like, I'm proud of the decisions that I've been making. I'm proud of how I've been showing up for myself. I'm proud of the boundaries I've been able to uphold. I'm proud of myself for working through my mess and working through my trauma and doing the inner work to sit in prayer or meditation or to journal. Like, I'm proud of myself for doing those things. Because again, it's like if we can start looking at ourselves in the mirror and just being like, I love the woman looking back at me. I'm proud of the woman looking back at me. I've been doing that a lot lately. I've been doing mirror work where I just spend some time just looking at myself and just like, and just seeing myself raw, unfiltered, by myself, just in the mirror and just like literally seeing all the different changes that are happening to my face and my body. And like, it's been interesting because it's like I'm seeing myself for the first time. And, gratitude is another great practice, I think, for high achieving women who are wanting to lean deeper into worthiness, because when we don't have that like sense of worth, it's also coming from a low vibration of lack and scarcity. And gratitude is on the other side of that. So, I have a client right now that we're going on over a year of her doing gratitude. And it's a note in her phone, so it's shared, so I can actually read it. And just like that practice of like, it's not saying that life is perfect, but like, I want you to find gratitude and find like pride in what you've been doing and how you've navigated things. So you can go back and see at the beginning of this year what you were dealing with and what you overcame, and at the end of the year. So gratitude is also something that I think for high achieving women, it's just like, take some time every single day and just 3 things you're grateful for. And every time that you do it, make sure it's something that is completely different from the day before. You never repeat a gratitude, never repeat it, because it forces you to start to seek out and to fill up this like tank for yourself of like, I'm doing enough. I'm doing a great job for me. And then when other people praise you, you don't, because yeah, I'm trying to think how to say this. When you're filled up with worthiness and you feel like you are really owning that, what happens is you take anyone's opinion of you like a grain of salt. So
Yes.
when someone's like, you're so amazing, you're so wonderful, it's like, okay, cool. But it doesn't impact my internal tank. My internal tank stays filled because I'm filling it. I'm doing what I need to do to fill it. So when someone says something great about me, it doesn't overflow. I can accept it and receive it because it's important to receive love and receive that. That is good. But it doesn't throw off my internal thermostat. When someone says, you're awful, you're horrible, I don't love you, or I think that your blog is stupid, or, you're not speaking at this event, it also doesn't impact my tank, because again, that is external. And if in worthiness is playing in the space of internal and like resourcing yourself. And so that's where gratitude can come in. That's where like doing things for yourself, because it's a muscle. You start to build up this like, I can take time for myself. I do have enough time to do this. And you start to feel better when you eat better, when you work out, when you meditate, when you journal, when you pray, when you do gratitude, when you go back to hobbies that you love, when you start saying no to things that don't serve you, you start to feel really, really good about yourself and within yourself. And so everything else is just, you can take it for what it is. A negative moment, a negative external piece of information, it's all just data, right? All it is data. And you take that data and you act accordingly. But it doesn't impact you. It doesn't throw you off. And you are now able to show up for those that you want to show up in the way that you want to show up in your career differently. And people take notice. People take notice when you're walking in your worthiness. And it allows them to know how to treat you. And it may trigger some things in other people. And that's great. Good. I wish more women would find their worthiness, walk in their worthiness, trigger other women, not because of envy. It's not, but it's like something about this person. I have a couple of friends who walked in worthiness, and it bothered me how easily they could navigate the world with this like worthiness. And I was like, I don't get it. But I let it be uncomfortable, and I spent more time with them. And I started to notice how they were navigating. I started to notice how they handled setbacks. I started to notice how they built their business. I started to notice how they set their routines up. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. So I love it when women walk in worthiness, because they allow other women to be like, oops, something's off. Let me course correct. And then we are inspiring each other bit by bit to walk in worthiness. And when we have a whole, movement of women walking in worthiness, things change, the world changes. And that's why I think I'm so passionate about what I do, because it's that important. And women need to know that they are valued, they are worthy, they are enough. And it's possible. Like the life that you want to live, the things that you want to have, the woman that you truly want to be at your core, it's all available to you. It's all available. But it starts with believing it. And I always tell people, you deserve what you desire. And if you can believe that and make that a belief, you will start behaving accordingly. And it shows up, and it's great and it's wonderful. So yeah, it's I feel you on that, where it's like the external validation from people that love you, but it does have an impact on your internal state, and it triggers certain behaviors and emotions and feelings.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Allison, I could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love this. But I have to respect your time, and we got to get you back to your day and coaching all of these fabulous women that need your help. But before
Yeah.
I let you go, tell the listeners, if, those that want to learn more about you, find out about your coaching services, how can they learn more?
Yeah, so really simply, you can go to my website. It's just my name, AllisonTibbs.com. So all of my stuff is there. That's where I kind of share a lot. On Instagram is another place where I'm pretty vocal, and I'm a bit more unhinged, if you will, and I share a little bit more, and I'm a bit more day to day there. And I have tons of, on my website, or you can join my newsletter as well, where it's like I have tons of just resources. So a lot of some of the practices I talked about today, I have them available to share with people who just need a little tool or need a little something to support them as well, because that's a part of it, right? It's like, let's get to the root cause, we can move forward. So yeah, I'm pretty available and easy to get in touch with, and love having these conversations with women about a lot of this stuff. So to anyone listening, if that's what you just want to talk through a bit more, I would love to have that conversation with you and just see what's possible. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Allison. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Yes, it was. I appreciate you.